of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. We'll begin by introducing the members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. On my right to your left, we have Member Schmidt. Next to him is our attorney, Mr. Gilchrist. To my left on your right is Patricia Curran. And then we have Member John Manillo. And of course, Chuck Golden from the Building Department. My name is Ann Clemente, the chairperson for tonight's meeting. We're going to begin by reviewing the draft minutes of our previous meetings. There were two of them. We'll begin with the September 13th meeting. It was a regular meeting held by the Zoning Board of Appeals. There are just three notations to take note of. The first begins on page 5. The last line on that page, just strike one of the two that's, Hoosick Road, that had light. And then on page 7, there's a correction. It's the third line from the bottom. In regards to which board discussed the two different lighting plans, it was the zoning board. And then following, okay, go ahead, sorry.
Three lines from that, at the end of the sentence, it says or of the, it should be or if the. It should be if instead of of. It should be if.
5, 6. So that's the sixth line from the bottom. The second to last word, if instead of. And on page 8, there's a correction on line 7, just the addition of the word poles. So it should read how close light poles were proposed.
What page was that?
Page 8. Line 7, it's the addition of the word poles. How close light poles were proposed. Noting those deletions, additions, and corrections, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting held September 13, 2021. Do I have a second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. And we'll move on to the minutes of the Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals joint special meeting held September 23rd. Are there any corrections that need to be made?
Next on page 4. 7 lines down, should say needed to be directly related instead of directed.
Thank you. Noting that correction, I make a motion to approve those minutes. I have a member second. Thank you, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. We'll just review the agenda as was posted on the town website. We have one deletion, and that is the application for 677 Hoosick Road. So we have two items of old business. We have Hoosick Road and Hillcrest Avenue, Action Sign Company LLC, followed by 580 Pinewoods Avenue. We have quite a number of new businesses, starting at 12 Colhammer Avenue, followed by the Hannaford on Hoosick Road, 208 Old Seek Road, 1004 Hoosick Road, and then lastly, application by Atlas Renewables. So we'll begin with a public hearing. It's the first item of business on our agenda for Action Sign Company LLC, property located on Hoosick Road and Hillcrest Avenue. It's a sign variance. We'll open the public hearing on this application, noting that the hearing was, the notice was published in the town record, placed on the town signboard, posted on the town website, and mailed to all owners of adjacent property within 300 feet. Attorney Gilchrist, would you kindly read the notice of public hearing, please?
Notice of public hearing. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held by the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Town of Brunswick at 6 p.m. on Monday, October 18, 2021, at the Brunswick Town Hall, 336 Town Office Road, Brunswick, New York, 12180, concerning the application submitted by Action Sign Company, LLC, for sign variances, including a monument sign and signs on the building, menu board, quarter point canopy, and clearance bar for a KFC fast food restaurant to be located at Hoosick Road and Hillcrest Avenue. Copies of the application are available at the Brunswick Town Hall and are available for public inspection during regular business hours. All interested persons will be heard at the public hearing.
Thank you very much. I'll just ask the representative, I believe Ken Shaw, would like to come up and just give a brief overview of the project. And if you could kindly tell us if there have been any changes to the application materials.
No. Again, my name is Ken Shaw from KBP Development. I represent KFC. And we're here for the sign application and variances for the building signage, the accessory signage associated with the drive-through, menu board, and canopy, as well as a front monument sign. And we're looking to develop the KFC on the 1.6 acre parcel that we'll be actually owning. We're not part of the development. We bought the property separately. And I think we've submitted a lot of plans back and forth with some communication, and there's no changes to what we had revised
Okay,
previously.
great. Yeah, thank you. All right, well, thank you very much, and kindly take a seat, and
Okay.
let's see if there's any interest in the public. So the zoning board will open the floor for receipt of public comment. If anyone would like to speak for or against this application, you're welcome to do so. I'll just ask the building department at this time, are we in any receipt of any public written
We've
comment?
received no written comments via
Thanks.
letter or email.
Thanks, Chuck. Are there any questions from any of the zoning board members? At a previous meeting, Member Schmidt asked for the site plan, and that was provided to him by the building department, just to kind of get a layout where that monument sign was in relation to the layout of the building and also Hoosick Road. So thank you. Thank you for providing that, building department. So hearing no public comment, I would make a motion to close the public hearing. Member second.
I'll second.
Thank you, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The public hearing portion of this application is closed. The zoning board members will prepare to deliberate and act on the application. I thought it was kind of noteworthy, and one of our previous meetings, the question to the applicant was, what is the purpose of a sign? What kind of information would you like to communicate with the signs? And I believe the answer was twofold. One was pedestrian safety, to be visible. I guess the business that KFC does is impulse, like an impulse customer. So they want to make sure that this amount of safety is provided for the travelers and the people in their cars coming into their establishment. And then the second was identification, customer identification of the building, so that they kind of, the customer coming down Hoosick Road would be able to identify what that building was and what services they provided, what food that they sold. So I think that's kind of important for the zoning board members to kind of have that framework when looking at the different signs that are being proposed here in this application. So we want to note that the Brunswick zoning law says that they're allowed 2 signs, that these establishments are allowed 2 signs. And again, the application is asking for 8. So there's a couple ways that we can go about this. We can look at each sign that's being proposed and kind of maybe start from there and kind of go that way. Or we can look at it as a package deal. I'm interested in knowing your opinions on how you'd like to deliberate and go over these signs.
Well, we did have concerns about the number of signs that was being proposed. And we got a better idea of what they were proposing by some of the actual photos that we had been provided. Um, But I don't know if we want, because their building itself, with the way that the building is painted and the coloring on the building, I think automatically identifies it as a KFC. So I don't know if anybody else has any concerns about the number of signs that they're proposing to put on the building to identify it as KFC.
And you're referring to the white and red striped?
Stripes and the awnings.
Mhm.
And like on the front of the building, they have the big Colonel Sanders sign. And then there's the KFC lettering over to the right of that, over one of the awnings. And then underneath that, they have the other part. I don't know if that's a separate sign or if it's all part of it, that it says Colonel Sanders, original recipe. So that's just on the front of the building. And it does the same thing on one of the side elevations. It has World Famous Chicken, and there's the other sign that says made the hard way, made by hand, with Colonel Sanders' face on it, and, so,
Mhm.
I don't know if it's just me or if anybody else has any concerns.
Mhm.
That seems like a lot of signage.
Mhm. So if we were to take that the design and the coloration of the building as an identifier, and then how these other signs kind of accentuate that, we can look at signs that are provided for almost more directional, though I wouldn't say they're directional signs. In particular, above the clearance bar, Real Meals to Go. That is one of the signs that is under consideration. As well as the pole shroud to the menu board. So my point in highlighting these two signs is that they are not out front. They're not on the building. Where that may be necessary there. And then maybe to reinforce your point that the signs that are on the front may be sort of duplicating what the coloration and the design of the building does. We could also look at the largest sign, which we could call that freestanding sign, the monument sign. John, by looking at the site plan, you had clarification of where it's going to be located. And we all understand where that is. Yep. Yeah. So-
That's in a good visible spot.
Very good visible spot. That's right. And just to clarify with the building department, Chuck, the dimensions of the monument sign are not in question. They're compliant. It's just that they'll count in the number of signs.
Right,
Yes.
yes, yep. 32 square feet per site.
Yeah, so I would propose that that's an important sign for this building to have. The location of it, the visibility to the passersby, the travelers going up Hoosick Road. It was submitted what the design would look like. I think in addition to having the 911 number on it, was that a comment that was made?
Yes, yep.
Mhm. And that
Yeah,
would be.
in the field down below on the subway brick. Mr. Shaw, if you could do that. Thank you.
I mean, if nobody else has any concerns about the number of signs, then I'm, fine with that.
Mhm.
It had been brought up at our last meeting when we talked about the signs, so that's why I brought it up again. So, but I'm fine to go forward if nobody else has any concerns.
So one of the elements that the board needs to consider is how substantial the requested variance is. So I think if we could knock that down a little bit to make it less substantial by taking into question the stencil signs as they're referred to in the application materials on the east side and west side of the buildings. In particular, the world famous chicken that was highlighted on page 8, made by the Hardway that you're referring to, Patricia, noticed on page 10.
So for that sign there, that made the hard way, it looks like it's not self-illuminated, it looks like it has lights that are illuminating up to it. And I know that was a concern we had with Hannaford, and we're trying to make sure that a lot of the lighting is shining down, this is more like shooting up. Is that, am I reading that correctly?
Towards the building,
Towards the building?
yes,
right?
yep.
It was really, I mean, given the direction of it, because it's gonna be on the Planet Fitness side, there's really no light spillage that would affect anybody.
Right. Or a real tough line of sight on the Planet Fitness side as well.
Say it again, I'm sorry.
Real tough line of sight on the Planet Fitness side as well. In that the building, the larger building of Planet Fitness blocks Kentucky Fried Chicken for people heading west on 7.
Mhm.
So the monument sign would be the big grabber there.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe not necessarily the signs that will be hidden by other buildings.
Right. Yep.
So it's between two awnings.
Mhm.
Is that the drive-through? Traffic there. So I think this. There's one on here, but I don't think they're very large from here back. That's the drive-through. So it's going around the back of the building.
Is that a concern that we could ask the applicant to help clarify?
I understand where they're going. I just wanted to make sure that the uplighting of the sign above the drive-through wasn't going to affect anybody else. So the truck, so if the building is going to block the rest of it, so they're shooting. You know, we try to have most of the lights be dark sky friendly, but we're shooting down instead of shooting up.
Yeah, so what I guess to move things along, what I would take into consideration as maybe not being necessary are the first three signs that were noted. So signs C, D, and E. Again, these are the stencil ones that are on the sides of the building. Noting the importance of the remaining signs, sign F, G, H, I, and we've spoke about L being the monument sign. Again, that would limit the how substantial the requested variance would be.
I agree with you, and the signs on the side of the building really can't be seen from Route 7. So they're really only something to read while you're in there already ready to order. So
Mhm.
we're going to eliminate signs. It makes sense to eliminate the ones on the side, not the ones on the front.
Right. Though on the front, so in addition to the way that it was designed with the red and white striping and the red awnings, there are two signs of identification out front. So the initials KFC, and then the design of, like you said, the Colonel Sanders head with the graphics underneath. I mean, it seems like that could be an or possibility, maybe not an and possibility, like the face and the KFC. Mr. Shaw, in regards to branding, which way is the company going?
Well, I think in hearing, I think you're struggling, like a lot of people struggle, is there's signage, and then of course there's branding of a building,
Right,
and branding of a building comes into signage.
yeah,
It's a reality of zoning, so I deal with these applications all the time.
sure,
So the purpose of the branding has something to do with pulling people off the roadway. It's almost like wearing a scarf with your sweater. It accents your look. And the stencils and the lettering on the building are not going to sell more chicken. It's just basically an architectural element to give the building more character. The key component that we consider signage would be the monument, the KFC, and selfishly, it's kind of hard not to represent the building without the Colonel, because the Colonel is our brand. You know, the KFC tells somebody, but the Colonel is not enough to exhibit. If you took the KFC off, it's not enough to tell people we're not familiar with the Colonel, but the two together kind of complement each other.
Mhm.
It's not like as powerful as the arch in McDonald's or the swoosh at Nike. They tell, you don't have to spell Nike out or McDonald's out with those.
Mhm.
We don't have that strong of a brand from the standpoint of the Colonel being separated from KFC.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the two differentials.
Those are lit
The
internal.
other stuff is artwork.
Mhm.
It's artwork whether it be in lettering or whether it be in
I really
pictures,
wanted
that
this
kind
nice
of
to go on.
complement the building.
Unfortunately not. This is-
To lose it is not gonna lose customers. But then again, to our regular customers, it would look like, where's the rest of your decorations? You know, where's the rest of your art elements? that's the questions we can ask, and we do eliminate a lot of this respectfully, because a lot of boards ask that question because the ordinances are written that way,
Mhm.
to do that. But, you know, we're not selling more chicken because there's a logo over the 9-foot clearance bar.
Mhm.
It just, it just kind of is a nice feature that ties the whole architectural element in.
I did not find any proof that the white and red banding of the sign, which you call branding, is a trademark.
No,
So that's why.
it resembles the bucket.
Right.
And truthfully, as you can see with all your other brands, that'll go away in due time. You know what I mean? Remember the red and white McDonald's or the gold, the brass Wendy's? You know, we're all evolving into a more contemporary building as we get into that. So it would not be out of the question that 2 years from now, as we evolve, the red and white is not there, but today it is there. But that comes from the bucket of chicken, that's the red and white.
Mhm.
Well, the trademark color, I have to consider as advertising for my square footage.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm looking to see a trademark.
So you're saying the KFC and the Colonel on the front of the building are part of your branding and having people, the two of them need to be
Yeah,
together.
it would look,
For people
if
to
it was, if
identify.
it was the Colonel by itself, it would look like you're missing a KFC.
Right.
If it was the KFC by itself, it would look the Colonel. I've never seen them separated,
Mhm.
but I've seen, truthfully, a lot of, when things have to be given up, if you have forward, there's a lot of the artwork that complement the building gets taken away.
Mhm.
Because it's, doesn't sell more chicken. It only appeases the customer who likes to see the completeness of the building. That's it. It's not,
So what could you see in your package that you presented to us that we could?
clearly from the physical plan, I think, as somebody mentioned earlier, it could be asked both ways. The signage on the Planet Fitness sign is not going to be visible to anybody, with the exception of people who will be coming through the drive-through. That's not, you know, even if I was to put a KFC sign or waste a sign there, it wouldn't be visible. The front is very important, the monument, and if anything, the left side, but the artwork on the left side, even that can go away. It need be, give me one to compliment it, doesn't need to be, you know. We just presented the basic standard building, and it's not unusual, to be very open and honest with you, that things go away in order to maybe meet a happy medium.
Mhm.
But if I was to deliver the building according to the ordinance and to be nothing up there, it would look like an unfinished building, and people would be saying, well, that's ugly. So,
Well, you'd have two signs to be compliant.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're asking for 8. So I think then,
But everything on that drive-through personally doesn't do anything other than the drive-through, so if they were to go, it would make the decisions easier. And then on the opposite side, you know, even the world famous chicken, the other one, you know, that's a sign, the other one's a non-aluminum sign. It would, and I could balance the building somewhere, leaving that in the middle versus just a blank building with red and white on it. Vice versa, either wants to get away with that one. The rear, there's none. So if that helps a little bit in the decision making, and even if it helps because of the number count, if they wanted just a simple 9-foot clearance sign with real meals to go without, I could manufacture whole sign without that. You know, that help, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to get to a space where. it's
Sure, and
palatable
we-
for you guys to
and we
say,
appreciate that.
It ain't 8 signs, it's really 4.
Is the KFC in the front always separated from the space? Or is it sometimes over the
Yes.
top and it's one?
Yeah, the actual, the KFC in the front is part of the architectural element of the building.
Okay.
In
So I don't
some,
know if we could combine them and kind of make that considered to be one sign, and put them all on the sign.
No, that's not how they have it on other surveys.
I don't see what square footage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the monument.
the only thing I always have to see whether it could, it's a panel, I hope whether it's a panel is part of the building. I don't know whether it should be nowhere to go over, but it's a great question. Because the position of it makes no difference.
So in our discussion, Mr. Shaw, I apologize, I'm missing the fourth sign that you're referring to. So the monument sign,
Monument.
the two front
Two in the
signs.
front. And then, nothing on the drive-through side because that would make it easy because nothing is visible to begin with. And then on the, non-drive-through side, just on the page, it shows two signs that will, world famous chicken
Right,
and the hard way, made by hand.
right,
So that's two signs. I would say if you eliminated one of those.
right.
Then that's,
Right, and if we were to eliminate one of those, kind of back to your point where regular customers are used to a certain way that the store looks, then perhaps what they would see more at their height and they're driving in their car would be the
correct.
made the hard way, made by hand. So that's where I would go with right now, if anyone has anything different, as we look at the different elements, would be those four signs. And is that right, Andy? Procedurally, we would have to go through our elements in consideration of those
Yes.
signs?
Just one question. Where do the clearance bars and things like that fall?
So Mr. Shaw said that he would, this doesn't necessarily have to be on the clearance bar. There's a meals to go.
Yep.
On that.
Got it. Okay. Yes, so you would, with respect to those four signs, still need to review your variance elements.
So that's what I would like to use going forward. Does anyone have any additions or another way that you would see? So again, the requested variance is for 8 signs. Right now, what's being proposed right now is 4. It would include the monument sign, the 2 signs in the front. They're highlighted on page 6 and page 7. And then on the east side of the building, the non-drive-through side of the building, it would be the made the hard way, made by hand with a picture of the Colonel.
So I can just clarify. The east side of the building is the Planet Fitness side of the building. We'll have one sign.
One sign.
And on the west side of the building, kind of
No,
adjacent.
none on the Planet Fitness side.
Zero on the plan.
Nothing on the Planet Fitness side.
That's-
That's what I thought.
Oh,
So
right.
on the east side of the building, 0 signs.
Is that
And on the-
east?
Or is it reverse?
I don't my direction, sir.
Yeah, the Planet Fitness or the drive-through side would be considered.
I would think would be
Oh,
the
I-
east
So
side.
the
Then
east is
I was
no.
wrong,
So
sorry.
we're talking about eliminating D.
And there's 2 stencils on the west side, but we're only doing we're only doing, E.
Right, correct.
There's no signage in any of the windows, correct?
And if I can, again, just to make the record clear, the sign designation letters for the four now being proposed are A and B. And E, is that right?
Yes,
Yes.
And then is the monument sign L?
yes.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. So we have our information. We'll go forward. This is a non-residential seeker review. We'll do that process. And in the application materials, a short environmental assessment form was submitted. And under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, the board needs to review the information contained in that assessment, using the documents to determine whether, in the board's opinion, there is a potential for at least one significant adverse environmental impact from the proposed action. And again, it would be the allowance of more signs than the Brunswick zoning law allows, going from 2 to 4. So I reviewed that that form, and I would make a motion that it does not have any potential to significantly impact the environment from this proposed action. Would a member second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Patricia. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Then we'll move on to our elements. Noting where the first one is to explain how no undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood, nor detriment to the properties nearby created by granting the area variance.
This is a commercial area. The other buildings have signage that's specific to their buildings, so, to their businesses. So I don't feel that it would have any impact on the area.
Mhm. Yep, I would agree to that. I would agree that the applicant has worked very hard to make aesthetically pleasing. And again, taking into consideration the safety of drivers and pedestrians. We're asked to explain why the benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance. Well, I think the exchange that the board had with the applicant kind of showed that we did find another method that was feasible for the applicant to pursue. And how it benefits both the town and the applicant. Then we're asked to describe whether the requested area variance is substantial. Again, noting that 2 signs are allowed under the Brunswick zoning law and 4 are being proposed.
And based on that we've been able to whittle it down to 4, I think is a very good compliment.
Then Then we're asked to explain how the proposed area variance will not have an adverse effect on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district.
Again, it's a commercial district and there's signs all up and down Route 7 already, so it's not gonna make much of a difference.
And then we're asked to explain whether the difficulty is self-created, noting that the consideration is relevant but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of the area variance.
It's part of their branding and what they're proposing for all their businesses.
So if there's no other further deliberation, we'll consider the balance between the benefit to the applicant as weighed against any detriment to the community at large or the neighborhood in particular, and determining to grant the requested variance.
I make a motion that we.
Want to verify which one?
That we approve the variance for the 4 signs.
Thank you, Patricia. And John, second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. So the area variance has been granted. Thank you for working with us tonight.
Thank you for working together. We look forward to being part of the community.
Great, thank you. Yeah, welcome. And the work going forward, just continue to coordinate with the building department.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a good night. Next, we have a public hearing for 580 Pine Woods Avenue. This is in regards to construction of a garage on the property. The notice of this public hearing was published in the Troy Record. It was placed on the town signboard. It was also posted on the town website and mailed to all owners of adjacent property within 300 feet of the project site. Mr. Gilchrist, if you can kindly read that notice, thank you.
Yep, notice of public hearing. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held by the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Town of Brunswick, 6:15 PM on Monday, October 18, 2021, at the Brunswick Town Hall, 336 Town Office Road, Brunswick, New York, 12180, concerning the application submitted by Elaine Young for an area variance in connection with construction of a garage and property located at 580 Pine Woods Avenue. Copies of the application are available at the Brunswick Town Hall and are available for public inspection during regular business hours. All interested persons will be heard at the public hearing.
Yeah, thank you very much. So the zoning board will open the floor for receipt of public comment. I guess before we do that, I'll just ask the applicant if they'd like to come up to the podium and just give a brief overview of the project. Hello, welcome.
Hello.
Thank you for coming tonight. We're glad you're here. I'd like just to give the board and the public a brief overview of the project, please.
I'm gonna turn it over to him because
We consider it a shed. Everybody's calling it a garage,
Okay. And just to confirm the dimensions of the shed?
18 by 30,
Oh, right.
18 feet wide, 30 foot long,
And how many stories?
one.
All right.
Kind of got the idea from the Amish. Rough cut boards, couple garage doors, a green tin roof. And when we were done next spring, we were gonna put some nice, like a light brown stain on it to protect the pine.
All right. Thank you. Have there been any changes to the application? No,
No.
since our last time we met? Okay.
No.
All right. Thank you. If you kindly take a seat, we'll
Thank you.
continue. Yeah, thank you. We'll continue with the public hearing. So I'd like to open the floor for receipt of public comment. If anyone would like to speak for or against the application, you're welcome to do so. I'll ask the building department, Chuck, are we in receipt of any written comments? No. Thank you. Okay. Hearing no public comment, I make a motion to close the public hearing. Would a member second?
A second.
Thank you, Patricia. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. The public hearing is closed. The zoning board members are prepared to deliberate and act on the application. If there aren't any questions.
No, I don't have any questions, just one comment that his neighbor on the one side did come to the
Rob?
first meeting,
Yeah,
yes,
my
and
next door neighbor.
said that he was not, and that's actually the side that you're encroaching on, and he said
Yes.
he didn't have a problem, so.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I think in our last meeting, we requested additional information, and that was the drawing of the garage with dimensions, and I believe the drawing of the shed on the site with setback measurements. We do have as part of the packet, like a Google Earth photo. So it's kind of customary that the zoning board has asked for this type of information for an application like this. So I guess we could do two things. One, we could say, the application is not complete because it doesn't have that additional information that the board requested. Or we could go forward and not have the applicant meet again, wait another month in November, the next time that the board meets, and then perhaps have the decision contingent on producing that information to the building department before the permit is issued. Does that sound reasonable?
I have to receive the plans to issue the permit.
Uh-huh. And you have not received those plans yet?
I have not received it yet. You're going to make them, your drawing there that I requested,
Drew it up,
okay.
delivered it, correct?
I'm not sure if that did not make it out
Okay.
in the packets. You guys have received that?
No.
Okay, we'll look for that in the office.
All right. So to not to delay things further, I guess we could go on, continue with this, and then have like a contingency plan where that information needs to be submitted to you. All right.
I would say that we did not.
After looking at the site, it's pretty obvious where the building's going to be.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. But just as precedent, we've done this before.
I understand.
Yes. All right.
I'm torn both ways.
Yeah. Right.
We
Right.
should have the information, but it's pretty obvious where the building is.
Right. I guess just for the completeness of the record, to have that
Yep.
measured out. That would be my point.
So we can go through and do our deliberation and then, but just not make the final decision until we have that information, or?
I would say, and Andy, perhaps you can give us more clarification about this, that we could go ahead with a decision and then have it almost like a condition. We could approve.
Right, from what I've heard, a couple of things. One, the board has historically wanted to see a map layout with the dimensions
Right.
on it. It may be that was prepared and submitted into the building department and didn't make it to you, that can get confirmed, verified.
I think it was the drawings. Was it not you submitted the drawings to the building?
The day I talked to you, I drove them up that night, she brought them the next morning.
Regardless.
I misunderstood, I didn't realize that you wanted measurements from the property line and where the building sits. I mean,
That was nice.
we can do that if we can, like, know her name, but what she had mentioned, if we can keep things rolling
Do a condition of
and
approval.
just
No, no.
like contingent,
Right.
get measurements and bring them back.
Right, let's continue. So one, you have required this information in the past. And it would now appear that that information is lacking, but the second thing I heard was at least one and maybe more board members have looked at the site, know where the building would be located, so in some respects have that information, maybe not in a plan or map form, but you have that information from the site. If the board thinks it has adequate information to move forward, you can review this and act on it. Certainly a condition could be a plan with those dimensions to be submitted with the building department upon application for the building permit, which is required anyway.
Right.
You could do that. But again, as Ann said, for precedent, generally you do require this information. I think the record will note that generally you have this in your packet. But if the board members feel that they have, based on the site visit and familiarity with the site, have the information that you would need that would be shown on the map, certainly you can move forward, make it contingent on formally submitting that for the building permit application. You could do that too.
Well, we vote on what the application is, and his measurements come back different, and the approval doesn't count, right?
No, I don't think that's going to change. That's 9 feet from the edge, so you're looking for the 15-foot setback, so you're looking for a 6-foot variance because he's currently at 9. The retaining wall was put up to allow for more usable ground over there once it was backfilled behind the retaining wall. That's what allowed for that flat area. So
So if I understand your concern correctly, your concern is what is being requested as the area variance that the board would be voting on. So, and that would not change, right? You wouldn't want that to change, right? All right. Yeah, so I'm ready to move forward. We had a public hearing. The public hearing has been closed. Are there any other questions for the applicant? No, all right. So we'll note that this is a type 2 action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. So no further seeker determination is needed. We'll look at our elements, beginning with explaining how no undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood nor detriment to nearby properties created by granting the area variance. I'll just begin by saying that in this neighborhood, there are other sheds, and the property that is in question, the neighbor, there's a great significant tree vegetation barrier that provides like any kind of visual barrier between these two properties. So I don't think there would be any undesirable change to the character of the neighborhood. Then we're asked to explain why the benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than requested area variance.
Well, there's the issue of the septic or the septic is in between the shed and where, is that a garage? Is there a garage on your house too? From
Not
this,
on the house, but there is a garage.
right, there's a garage. And your septic runs between,
In between the
In
shed
between
and
the
the
two,
garage, correct. That's why we asked for the variance,
right,
because Chuck did come over and did a rough measurement, and I think we missed by like 6 feet. I think that's what the,
Oh, the 15-foot versus the 9 you're asking for the side setback? Yes.
yeah.
And then we're asked to describe whether the requested area variance is substantial. Again, what's being proposed is 9 feet, required is 15. It's a 6-foot encroachment.
I would consider that to be
Thank you. I asked how explain the proposed area variance will not have an adverse effect on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. I say no, there'll be no increase in noise, light, water runoff from this project. And then we're asked to explain whether the difficulty is self-created. Consideration is relevant, but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of the area variance. Well, I think like the applicant noted in the application, it is self-created. The owners want to be able to have this extra storage for the the pickup truck and other necessary tools. So if there's no other further deliberation, we'll consider the balance between the benefit to the applicant is weighed against any detriment to the community at large or the neighborhood in particular, to determine to grant, to deny, or to grant with a contingency the area variance.
I would make a motion that we grant with the contingency that, what did you say,
That the map or plan with
the measurements or the setbacks?
the shed garage
Yep.
location with measurements to the lot line.
Is submitted to the building department.
And I think it'd be appropriate at the time of the building permit application.
Thank you. Would a member second?
Second.
Thank you, John.
And we'll
I'm
note
sorry.
if we can on the motion that that is to grant a right side setback to 9 feet. And that the plan needs to be consistent with that.
Right.
Right. Variance of 6.
Who seconded that? John?
John? Yeah, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Your variance has been granted. Please continue to work with the building department as you go forward.
Okay, I'll call in.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. That concludes the old business portion of the meeting.
Before you move on, if we
Sure.
could just confirm that Shapishi will be renoticed for your November meeting.
Okay.
So that'll be at 6. And that's contingent on getting the correct application documents filed.
And there were 4 things asked of that applicant that were not in the initial packet. And that was a scaled rendering on the building. It was the total square footage of signs. It was a list of the existing and proposed signs. And it was a letter from the owner of the property giving permission to the applicant to do this project.
Scaled rendering on the building.
Right. Total square footage of signs. A list of existing and proposed signs.
Mhm.
And a letter from the owner of the property giving permission to the applicant.
Correct. And then 5 corrected application form.
Right. Thank you. All right. So now we're under new business. And the first application is 12 Coalhammer Avenue, Thomas Ogden. If you'd like to come up And just give us a little overview of your project, please.
This would be for a shed also. 16 by 16 would be the dimensions. Kind of a rough cut lumber, skin with metal roof, and a nicer looking front of wood staying front or something. We're not fully, to the remodel of the front when we put it up. We just don't know how we're gonna do it yet.
We also need some drawings for this one too.
Pardon me?
We will need a.
Oh, Chuck, I did it with Chuck last week.
Okay, thank you. And are you Mr. Ogden?
Yes.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you for coming tonight. So it's a rear yard setback variance is what you're asking?
How thick are those trees in the back of your lot?
How thick?
Yeah, I mean, there looks like there's quite a few trees.
There are, I have a picture on my phone if you'd like to see it.
Well, I've seen it just by doing.
Right, they're 60 foot tall. They're probably 18 to 20 inches in diameter in the trunk.
Look, I was just wondering because of, you asking for the setback from.
Right.
from-
We took down two sheds that were about 4 feet from the property line, but they were small, they were 8 by 10s. So we took them down in the spring. I have talked with the rear neighbor, John Mack. He said as long as we give 6 feet off, then he would be fine with it. So I guess if you send out that letter to everyone, he'll know what we're talking about, because he already okayed it.
Right, he will be notified, yeah. Mhm.
And that is what you're proposing is a 6 foot.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because of the septic system and the trees in the yard.
So if I understand correctly, the drawings of the shed were given to the building department, and are you in receipt of those?
The drawings of the construction of the shed?
I guess what the shed would look like upon completion, what will the shed look like? Do you
I
have,
have not received those drawings.
is there
Turn them
any,
in with the application, the sketch that you had. I gave you guys.
But-
I don't know if I got it or not. If it is, I can bring it over tomorrow. I don't know if anybody's looked at which casinos.
Yeah, but it has no bearing.
Oh, it's the same type.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
have,
if
we
you
have the
could.
sketches, we thought we handed them in. They could be in a pile
yeah, sure,
No.
understand.
where we could bring them in.
Yeah, that would be great. If you could kindly give them to Chuck at the building department, and he'll make sure that the members have those before we meet again. But otherwise, the application looks complete for the purpose of holding a public hearing. And you were here from the beginning. Did you see how the other public hearings went? It'll be the same thing. We'll notify the neighbors. It'll go out on the website, the signboard, in the newspaper. People have the opportunity to speak for or against this project. And kind of go from there. So do you have any questions for us?
I don't believe so. We just
No.
need the sketch of what the shed will look like
That's right.
and dimensions.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And we're meeting again in November. It's the third Monday in November. It's the 15th. And it will be at 6:15. We have another public hearing at 6, so it'll be at 6:15.
Right.
That sound okay?
Yep.
All right.
Does that delay starting anything, or how does that work? If I get the pictures. the
It
sketch
doesn't. No,
tomorrow,
yeah, right.
fine.
Great question. It doesn't. It won't delay anything. This is how it goes. We meet with you for the first month. We review the application, and then you come back the next month when the zoning board meets we'll work on the application. So I just have one question for you. Would you kindly give permission to the zoning board members to come out and see the property? You can kind of
Yeah,
get
no
a view.
problem. Mike was over there before,
Great.
so he knows where it is, but
All
I
right.
don't care.
All right. Well, we appreciate it.
We
Yeah.
took down 2 sheds that were dilapidated, so it's gonna look better.
Sure it is. Yeah. Right.
And there's no other place to put it
Uh-huh.
because of the septic system.
Okay. Yep. Right. That's good information for us to know.
Okay, I'll drop the things, if you're gonna be in tomorrow or,
Oh, yeah.
okay? I'll-
Maybe
by
somebody
tomorrow.
else will be there too.
Hmm?
So maybe somebody else will be there too.
Oh.
Just, I have one person out on training.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Have a good night. We'll see you in November.
Busy today. I was only one person. It was nuts. All right, so we got a public hearing at 6:15. That's a mail-in list. I never did.
All right, moving on. Brings us to AJ Signs, Hannaford on Hoosick Road. Like, kindly come up. Thanks. Hi, thank you for coming tonight. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Would you like me to start?
Sure, just give us a little presentation.
Sure. My name is Elizabeth Hobbs. I'm here to represent Hannaford tonight. I'm going to present our proposal for a sign variance at our new supermarket location at 9 Lord Avenue. To get started, I want to briefly recap our original submission for a permit to the planning board. The submission was for our brand standard package and requested approximately 326 square feet of signage comprised of 4 signs. The proposal exceeded the area allowance of 300 square feet, as well as the individual sign allowance, which is a maximum of 2 signs. The code enforcement officer denied our application accordingly. In an effort to more closely align with the town code, we've revised our proposal to reduce our requested variances from 3 to 1. Our overall square footage is just shy of 300 square feet, so we no longer require an area variance, and the number of signs we're requesting has reduced from 4 to 3. So the one request we would like to make of the zoning board tonight is that Hannaford be granted relief in being allowed 1 extra sign on our building. For anyone unfamiliar with the property and approved site plan, the supermarket will actually be set back approximately 600 feet from Hoosick Road due to the physical characteristics of the land. And we think it's pretty crucial in the public interest for signage to be visible and informative. And what we're proposing with these 3 signs accomplishes that. As you're all aware, this site is located in the commercial zoning district. And we feel it's evident that the use and scale of this property as proposed is consistent with the district's purpose in the surrounding areas. The signage as proposed effectively identifies a grocery store off Hoosick Road without being a distraction to cars. And as a result, we feel this signage should not negatively impact the commercial character of the neighborhood. As mentioned, we're 600 feet set back due to the topography, so we're unable to reduce the signage footprint any further without compromising visibility to the site. The pylon is necessary to introduce the site to customers from Hoosick Road, and the main Hannaford sign, which would be on the right-hand side of the building, is necessary for identification to those turning left off Lord Ave onto the property. The third sign, which we're requesting the variance for, is the second building sign at the second entrance and exit. So we have 2 peaks. The first one is the main Hannaford on the right. On the left-hand side, this is our third sign and what we require the variance for. Both the main entrance and the secondary exit, they're located, as I said, under these 2 symmetrical peaks of the building. And apart from eliminating customer confusion and navigating once on-site, this second icon, which is the Hannaford cornucopia, is really necessary to kind of create balance and symmetry on the building, architecturally speaking. The requested relief is not substantial, given that our proposal does not exceed the area allowance. We are under the 300 square feet. The third sign achieves visibility, identification, And we feel a more aesthetically pleasing facade. And we feel that far outweighs any detriment that may be realized if if the zoning code were to be strictly enforced. A couple other things I want to mention, that these signs will be using the latest in LED lighting technology. So they will be environmentally friendly, limiting the amount of light emitted. The neighborhood should not be adversely impacted. And this package as proposed is really our best attempt at working with the physical features of the property and the aforementioned issues, including the topography. They're not created by the developer or Hannaford, they're just pre-existing conditions of the site. And we hope this request is reviewed as de minimis in scope, and so that the benefit can be realized by both Hannaford and the public. And thank you very much. That's all I
Yeah,
have.
thank you. I just have a quick question in regards to the night view drawing of the freestanding sign. Is there, so I see in the scale for the 911 number, it's triple zeros. And it's hard to read on the night view. Is any remedy for that, or?
Oh, in this image here? On the
Yes.
side. I sort of wonder if that's a printing.
Yeah, so we have
yeah.
in color, I don't know.
Yeah.
I would assume those numbers aren't going to be backlit or illuminated. The light inside the top of the sign will probably shine. on
I
it.
said there's LED downlighting. Yeah. Yeah.
Lights in the peak coming down in it.
Yeah. So will these numbers be,
It'll not be as bright as the Hannaford
Certainly not
face,
as
but
bright as-
they'll be lit with the lights from the canopy from above.
Mhm.
So they'll be more visible than they are in the picture.
Okay.
yeah, it's a little bit of printing.
It's just hard to
There's
depict the two different kinds of lighting.
No signage for the pharmacy on the side of the building? You have a drive-through pharmacy, right?
Yeah, there is a drive-through pharmacy. I asked that question earlier, and they said there was going to be no signage.
Yeah. And we
And I asked
actually,
about directional signage to the pharmacy in the parking lot, and they said there's going to be no signage.
in fact, we'll have our Hannaford to go as well, but we removed the sign on that awning as well. The red, it's well known that that's a function of Hannaford, so we felt we could remove that as well.
Is that a tomato they put the wheels on?
Yes.
Is that what that's supposed to be? Okay.
Correct.
I wasn't sure what that was.
So tomato on wheels. Yeah.
How's it look? Okay, yeah, great. So the application looks complete for the purpose of holding a public hearing, which will be on November 15th at 6:30.
Great.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You said 6:15?
30,
30,
6:30,
thank you.
yeah. Okay. Next, we have 208 Old Seek Road. This is an accessory structure on the property located in front of the primary structure. That's the area variance that's being sought. Okay. Would the applicant like to come forward and just give us a brief overview of the project, please? Thank you. Uh-huh. Hi, good evening.
I'm Don, this is my wife Kathy.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming tonight. We're glad you're here.
It's a 30 by 50 garage, metal garage. We're actually buying it, having it put up by Joe's.
Joe Cycle Shop?
Yes.
Yeah.
And basically just wanted to store we have a boat and vehicles, and where we live, a lot of pine needles and stuff like that, and sap. So we like to have storage to put our stuff in. The reason it's so big is because we have a boat and needed a bigger area to fit the boat in. But
We have requests for considerably bigger too, so you are under the minimum of 1,500 square foot accessory structure, so
But that's it. It's going to be all metal roof, metal. I don't really know what to say about it.
Yeah, no, we appreciate the information that you've given us.
This, where we're asking to put it is because the back of our house has a leach field. The other side of our driveway is, we don't own that much of it on that side of our house. And the well's in front of the house. And it slopes downhill. And at the base of our hill is a right of way going along the whole bottom of the property. So we can't put it anywhere other than that we thought we could use our driveway to get into it, which would be in front of our house, which is actually the side of our house. Our house isn't facing the road. It's the side of our house facing the road. But that's where it would be.
Can you see your house at all from the road?
Yes,
Oh, you can?
yes, and this won't block that.
Yeah, because I mean, this picture looks like you're surrounded.
You can
Trees.
see it. It's kind of on an angle when you look down the driveway, but you can see it.
So this is Old Seek, is that,
Yes.
that's Old, yeah. Yeah, great, thank you. It's a very complete, well-put-together application. Appreciate the work that you put into it. Like the other applications, we'll schedule for a public hearing. It'll be next month in November 15th. It's a Monday, and that'll be at 6:45 PM. Yeah, 6:45. So if there are any other questions come up before then, you can just go to Chuck at the building department to answer that. And I just have to ask you one last question. Do you kindly give permission to the zoning board members to come out and see the proposed project site? Okay, thank you.
Best way to get there is a quad on the power lines.
There is a beware of dog sign, but my dog's either in the house or it's not running around. So you don't have to
Yeah,
worry.
all right, very good. Yeah, very good. Well, thank you very much. We'll see you in November,
What was the date again? Sorry.
the 15th. Yep, yeah,
6:45.
6:45.
Thank you.
Yeah, very welcome. Pardon me?
We're all set.
You're all set. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Take care. Next up, we have 1004 Hoosick Road, Troy Botanical Garden, Brunswick Greens. It's a sign variance. Hello.
Yes, right now it says Brunswick Golf, and what we want to do is just change the sign because now it's Botanical Garden.
Uh-huh.
This original sign, as you see, was 86 by 37. What I'd like to do is make it 86 by 86.
Mhm.
It's going to stay right in the same spot where it is now.
Okay. And the
Drop a
lighting,
check.
I'm sorry. Oh,
Oh. As far as I know, there is no lighting.
no lighting.
The
Is there a light
existing lighting is going to stay. It is a couple of outdoor, or not so much outdoor, they're rated for outdoor, but they're work lights
Mhm.
that are on fastened to a plank
Mhm.
going across the perpendicular with the light shining up on the light.
Right. I appreciate the sign that you have where you overlaid the new sign to the old sign. That's very clever and it's very graphic. Gives a lot of information right there. And Chuck, just to confirm, there's no issue with the setback, the location of the sign?
No,
Okay.
it's in,
Okay. Yeah, very good. So we'll put you on the agenda for next month, the next time that the zoning board meets, which is in November, November 15th. 7 o'clock, lucky 7.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
We
Thank you.
was wondering if he was still going to be here because he was saying he's a snowbird. November, you're starting to push it. They usually migrate south by then. It's the owner came in with that application and very interesting individual, had everything all, all put together and it was a good package. He, I guess, has owned golf courses in the past. So
This might have been the contractor then? Who represented the applicant?
that gentleman runs the pro shop.
Oh, okay. There you go. All right. And last but not least, Mr. Brennan, nice to see you again. This is for Atlas Renewables. Two different projects.
Good evening, good night, and thank you for the opportunity to present these two projects. My name is Luis Torrent. I'm the director of Atlas Renewables, which is the company, the parent company of the Brunswick Solar LLC and Seekaway Solar LLC, the two applicants for these projects. Jointly with Mr. Brennan, we will be presenting why we are requesting a public utility use variance for these two projects. Project number 1, Brunswick Solar LLC, is located in Chippy Lane, which is on the south of Brunswick Road, tax ID number 102.1.18.12. This will be connecting to National Grid feeder line, which will be connecting to a Seekaway substation, also from National Grid. It will be around 16 acres out of the 24 acres of the parcel. This parcel currently is classified as R25, and therefore it's not allowed for solar. The second project, Seekaway Solar LLC, with tax ID number 102.1.16, located on the north of the Brunswick Road. It will be around 25 acres out of the 66 acres, also connecting to National Grid, to a different feeder line, but connecting to the same substation, Seekaway substation. Also, this parcel is classified currently as R25 and therefore not allowed for community solar. We are asking for a use variance under the public utility standards. Mr. Brennan will present the particularities of these public utility standards. We consider that there are some uniqueness on these two parcels that could qualify for the public utility use variance.
Thank you, Liz. Good evening, everyone. Trying to think back when I was last here, so I hope everybody's been well. It's always a little bit of a blur, but I promised that I would be back at some point. I didn't realize this soon on a different topic, but I am back like a. I always mix my metaphors, so I'll leave that aside as to what. But so I'm here representing Atlas Renewables on this application. And I thought what I would start with is just a kind of a quick overview of why we're here in front of the zoning board and how this normally works. So solar is an allowed use in the town of Brunswick. And this is what I would consider is a standalone commercial grade. There's actually the category is one that requires a special use permit, and it's allowed in what seems like a vast expanse of the town of Brunswick. So it's allowed in the agricultural A40 zone, the agricultural overlay district, both the industrial districts as well as the business light overlay. So summarizing that quickly on the zoning map that's shown, it's basically the eastern, I would say half, one may argue and say it's 2/3 or 4/5, but basically the eastern part of the town is zoned to allow large-scale solar projects by a special use permit to be issued by the planning board with site plan review. And the difficulty in why we're at the zoning board this evening is while the land use allows, the zoning districts allow for solar, the facilities, the infrastructure that exists in that part of the town does not allow the connection. And so what that means is that to have solar, you need the piece of property that's big enough to put the panels on. But as importantly, you need the feeder line to connect to the distribution line, and you need a substation for that feeder line to connect to. And so in the materials that we've provided, we show is an overlay of the zoning map with the National Grid infrastructure layout. So you need basically a 13.2 kilovolt transmission line. And that line, they're not all this, and this is a lot of new stuff to me as well, so I'm learning as I go, but all of those are not created equal, meaning some of them have only so much capacity left in them. Similarly, they tie into substations that you see around town. Some of those substations have capacity and others do not. And when you overlay these two things together, what you see is that the feeder lines in the eastern part of the town do not have capacity. And the one that does have capacity feeds into a substation that's already has its capacity used up. And what that basically means is that while it's zoned for solar in the eastern part of the town, we can't, in fact, build a project in the eastern part of the town because there's either no distribution line to connect to or no substation to connect to. And so for that reason, we need relief in the form of a use variance. And so, some months or years ago, we went through this process with the cell tower on the use variance, and that there's a different standard for public utility uses. And so what is presented in the applications is the case law, and under the same theory is that these uses, which are public utilities, which are essential services and creating and distributing electricity, need to be located in areas where there's the correct infrastructure, where there's the population to use them. And so there's case laws largely because solar, if you follow in the news, solar is a little bit more of a newer animal in the state of New York than wind projects. So the case law for wind projects has held that wind projects that generate electricity are public utilities. And so similarly, solar that generates electricity we suggest should be considered as a public utility. And I can flip through the mapping that Louis brought, but basically, what we call this the eastern part of the town. These red lines are just put this back a little bit. But these red lines are the large distribution lines that go through the town. The blue squares are the substation. So there's a substation called Brunswick out here, which I believe is 351. This substation, while it has a blue line going into it, has 16 megawatts of feed already associated with it, whereas it only has 12 megawatts worth of capacity. So this substation doesn't work. All of the rest of the large feeder lines in this area of town are red, meaning that they don't have capacity to connect to. Orient myself on the map. So the one project, the two projects are right about here. This is the Troy Country Club. Right here is the hamlet of Eagle Mills. And so the lines that have capacity are all in the western half of the town. And so for that reason, we're seeking relief. To upgrade any of these lines is basically $1 million a mile to try to upgrade the lines. The substations are more than that. And so for that reason, for these small scale, this is a 5 megawatt proposed system, it's not economically feasible to upgrade the lines. Your zoning law talks about that solar is to be permitted by a special use permit under the idea that it's a performance criteria, meaning that the zoning is set up, and if you look at your special use permit criteria, there's like A through L or M or N of the criteria that we want to judge these against. And the idea being that, I'll call it, there's large setbacks and they're trying to make them not visible or not impactful to the surrounding properties. And what we are able to do is locate sites that meet those performance criteria, where they're not visible and not going to be impactful to the neighbors, but they're not in the correct zoning district. And so we have two projects. It was suggested in our discussions that we don't do one and then come back 3 months later with another one. We would roll out both of them at the same time so you could see what the proposal was, and go through. And I think like, somewhat unfortunately in my past history here, that this is going to be a little bit of a lengthier one, both with the interaction between the planning board and the zoning board, both with seeker and with the process itself. But we wanted to start here at the zone, which is really kind of the gatekeeper that, again, if we don't have the variance, this doesn't move forward at all.
Well, thank you for coming to us first.
One of these days, I'll come back in with an easy one. The qualities of the actual, what I'm seeing elsewhere, both in my role as municipal attorney elsewhere, is also, and we also do a lot of solar projects, is that the big issue becomes really twofold, and this is a little bit beyond the use variance issue, but is the visibility of these projects, where you really see the pushback from the neighbors, and the concern is whether they're right up on the road and visible to these are nicely sited, so they're not. And the other thing that actually comes into play here and is worth highlighting is, you see it in the news a lot, but I'm seeing it firsthand, is the turning over agricultural property into solar is a real pressing issue that I'm seeing an awful lot. And this what it is on the west part of town, we'll leave that aside, but historically, in large part, the agricultural portion of the community there's a lot of pressure that's put on ag resources, because those open fields, and a lot of times they have the transmission lines going through them, the larger distribution ones, are being highlighted for large scale solar. And there is a real confluence between the $1,500 or so an acre that the solar projects pay, and about, I'll say, 175 to 125. You tell me what ag pays lately, but it's probably about $100 an acre that a farmer pays for fields. And what you have is a real tension that's existing about the conversion of farmland into solar, and farmers having to go further and further afield. And some of them like it. I mean, some of them like to supplement it, but there's also the idea that it's taking usable farmland out of production. But I think if you ask around, there's a real tension between the farmers wanting a little bit of supplemental income and those that are losing those fields that they rent from others that are paying like 15 times the going rate for solar and taking that out of ag production. And so this is never going to solve that problem, but certainly doesn't present it for the town, which makes this ideal.
Well, it's just the opposite. It's the amount of trees that will be taken down.
Yeah, there is the trees that are taken down, but the one project, one of them is fairly open. The other is treed, but actually historically wasn't treed. If you had a chance to go through the applications in detail, there used to be, I never knew this, a speedway on the one off of Shippey Lane, which predates all of us, but it was vacant land at one point, and now it's treed. And while the trees will come down, again, I'm seeing there's probably 10 people have 20 different opinions, but there's a little bit of a preference I'm seeing out there that the farm community would rather see the trees taken down because they grow back, rather than taking the fields that are already cleared of trees and putting solar in and not allowing the crops or the grazing to go on. And that is, I'm sure, certainly has a variety of opinions associated with that. But the idea is that if you're putting it where the trees are and you leave the trees around it, people don't see it, which seems to be the biggest issue out there is when you get into communities with the housing stock, is people don't want to look at them from their homes or their backyards. And what we're trying to deliver are, principally are projects that meet that performance criteria.
In the, this one here, is this a barn? Or is this?
That is a house.
It is a house.
It's a house. There is, so the parcel is, and Lewis can speak to this a little bit better, but there is a house right next to that one that we've spoken to extensively with that gentleman. He owns like a little, is it an acre maybe, or 3/4 of an acre?
We have been talking with him regularly. His name is George Connor. He was very happy. And what he told us is that if I was 20 years younger, I will do it by myself. He's apparently ITV92, which is very well considered. I've been talking with him on this one. I visit and regularly catch up with him. So yes, we have a kind of agreement that a portion of our parcel will be for him because he has plans to extend, and that portion of the parcel we cannot place solar modules. So in principle, he's very positive with this one.
What are you proposing for access on the northern lot, off the Brunswick Road? The bridge washed out. The only land access you have is from McChesney Ave. Are you planning on having an access road put through there, or is there going to be an owner that's going to allow you access?
Yeah.
From Chester Avenue, I will be not crossing the river, I will be accessing
So Chuck, what washed out?
The bridge, there was a bridge over the creek.
Years and years ago.
Oh, years, okay, I thought.
Yeah.
We will not be building that bridge because it's super
We
expensive.
talk about, yeah, that's, it goes right up there with a power line.
Yes.
If you built the bridge again, you would be putting solar panels there, there'd be a cross on there.
Yeah.
So basically, the bridge would be here.
Yes.
It will be accessing from here. This property,
That gentleman's going to give you a permanent right-of-way through there?
we have an easement agreement with this gentleman. Yes, and we'll be accessing here and we'll be connecting here. So from utility point of view, it is not a problem because we
Yeah.
are checking the current connection.
Mhm.
Initially, we were thinking with the bridge, but it's around for 20
You said that was Flynn?
It's Mr. Michael Flynn. Yes.
So the transmission line that runs, because I actually live on Heather Bridge, runs right behind us through the apartments. That's all the way over to Hillcrest Avenue into that transformer station there.
Okay.
Are you tying into that line there? Because that's the one you're saying has the capacity for transmission lines?
Close to the area, there is ultra high voltage transmission line belongs to National Grid. We cannot connect the community solar project to a ultra high voltage transmission line. We maximum can connect National Grid territory 13.2 kilovolts, as Mr. Brenner has mentioned. In NICE territory, we can connect up to 34 kilovolts. The field this territory is only 13.2. In that cross the roads, there are a transmission line plus 2 distribution lines at 13.2 kilovolts. We're connecting Brunswick solar farm to one of the feeder lines and Seaway to the other feeder line.
Okay.
Which runs in parallel, so in the middle there is a transmission and side by side there is a distribution line.
So on the map there, you're saying the lines in red are the ones where there's no more capacity left to tie into?
Yeah, and so those are
That's the
district,
first time I've seen that because Even Renewable came in front of us and they're doing theirs on 278. And that looks like it's in the area of red where the transmission lines wouldn't, like you're saying, are not able to be tied into.
This got information from National Grid. This picture is extracted from National Grid website, the hosting capacity. This is public information and anybody can.
yeah, so there's like, I wasn't even thinking of that one. I was thinking of the one that's over off of, in Eagle Mills and I always.
Hope Solar.
What was it called?
Hope Solar, behind,
Yeah, so there's the one, I sat through and saw that one. I guess now that you mentioned it, there was the one off of 278 going over to 2 that was, I caught a little, there's 2 of them.
yeah, there's
The new one going in.
There was a second one that was approved for Eden, but Eden sold before they even started building. So I'm not sure who the new owner is or when they're proposing on starting. I've received nothing yet. Yeah.
These are the distribution lines. It is not represented here, the transmission lines, which is not public information. So all these lines in different colors are distribution lines. And Mr. Brennan has mentioned, the color represents the capacity. Blue color is more than 5 megawatt. Light blue color is 3, green is 2, and the red lines is less than 0.1. 0.1 megawatt is maybe good for good for a small commercial, but not for a community solar project. The question is it possible to build a solar farm here? Technically, yes, but then you will have to upgrade all these miles, and upgrading all these miles is millions. A person has a lot of time for national installments, and we have some projections that confirm that it's $1 million per mile. You want 4 miles.
$4 million.
$4 million. If the Brunswick solar farm, we are 100 foot from the 3 phase. And yes, the quotation commercially has been approximately 120,000 for the connection works, plus $200,000 for upgrading these 1,000 foot. So as a rule of thumb, yes, every mile is $1 million.
I guess I draw the distinction between, so you live in Heather Ridge, is that the one that comes off at 2, or is it, okay? And there's transmission lines between those. So
Right.
you cannot connect these into those.
I guess that's my question. I didn't know the difference between the transmission and the distribution.
Yeah, so that's,
The high
so
tension one, 7,500 feet up in the air, those are transmission lines.
those are transmission lines.
Okay.
And these sort of projects at 5 megawatts, the community solar, we'll circle back in a second and talk about what is community solar, cannot connect to those transmission lines, the ones that are in right of ways that go through towns. And, that one feeds up and eventually gets into Scotticoke, if I remember correctly. What sometimes happens are the bigger projects, the 25 megawatt projects, the wind projects that create and generate a lot more electricity, qualify to connect into those. They actually have to find a spot and create their own substation and step the power up to the transmission line and send it down the transmission line to other parts of the state. Those projects are different than the community solar, which is capped at 5 megawatts and is really meant to feed into the local grid. And while it can be used up, there's basically territories within which we're supposed to sell this power to users. It can be individual households, it could be a hospital, it could be a school, but basically it's within a national grid sort of territory within which we're trying to sell it. And so as the difference being is when we're talking about distribution lines, we're really talking about the telephone poles that go up and down every single town, state, and county road. And obviously the preference is the 3-phase, which is if you look up at the tippy top of the pole, there's the 3 wires versus 1 wire, which is single phase. And so that's the difference. So if a person were to come in with a 25 megawatt project way out in the eastern part of the town where they could put in a brand new substation, that sort of project, could feasibly be there, but a 5 megawatt community solar project cannot.
So I guess my question is, and I never thought there'd be a problem with too much electricity for the distribution lines. But if you were to put your project in, does it max out the distribution lines now in that area where another project couldn't come in later on down the road? Making them unusable, I guess is my question.
There are 2 restrictions. First, the capacity of the feeder lines, and second, the capacity of the substation. So here we have different substations. One of these is the substation. The substation, the capacity maximum is 12 megawatt. In the feeder is 16 megawatt. It means that unless one of the project fails, the last project from 12 to 16 will not happen. Why? To upgrade one of these substations is millions. And millions is probably more than 6 million. So a really small project cannot afford. 25 megawatt, maybe that's big, but not upgrading enough. Okay, so this is one restriction. The second restriction is on these feeder lines. Okay, there is also a physical restriction. These feeder lines, maximum at 13.2 kilovolts can run 10 megawatt maximum. So imagine that we install these two projects and then another project comes, for the restriction of the capacity of the substation, plus the restriction of the feeder lines, those additional.
That's my question. The project you're planning, the scope of the two projects together, basically for that whole area now limits to what you're proposing. So next year down the road, if there's another 40 acres becomes available, there's really not capacity in the distribution lines to have that. So these projects are pretty much limiting themselves because of the capacity of the distribution lines in the area.
I'd like to just make sure we have the exact right answer, but in theory, what you're saying is correct. There is the ability to, when you connect to these distribution lines, you're going to basically use up the available capacity of them, thereby preventing, whether it's considered a good or a bad, a subsequent project going in, because there's no additional capacity without them making the similar $1 million a mile upgrade,
Right.
which basically makes these small projects not financially viable. So it is a little bit of a self-limiting endeavor here that you can have a couple of these or three of these, and at some point you're going to make the next one won't be able to come in for the same reason we can't go elsewhere, as those lines are already used up. But that's a good technical question, so I'd want to make sure that we clarify that in writing and that
No,
we're
it just
not.
seems like we're getting a lot of applications for these, and I think it helps to understand ourselves.
Yeah, well, that's the other tension point, and I'll be I always try to be frank and honest, is the communities are going, okay, are we doing our share? Are we doing more than our share? Some communities are saying we don't want to do any of this. And so there is that sort of balance of, how much is enough, how much is too much, and where do you draw the line, and what's the impacts of all of this. And so, fair enough. And I do think, again, I was focusing on the one down off of Eagle Mills, that project going, okay, that one I can kind of make sense because the green and blue lines peter out right at that point in Eagle Mills, and I could see where that was probably able to connect. The one up on 278, I don't remember the details of that, although I think Eden is actually one of my firm's clients. I don't represent them, but there's got to be some answer to that of whether they're making an improvement, or maybe it's a larger project connecting some other way. But that's thinking ahead, was thinking at some point we're going to get asked the question, what about this other project or that other project? How do they make this work?
I don't think that was ever presented to us in their plan. They had a very detailed plan.
Oh, yeah.
Another community solar, but I don't think it ever came up, to the depth of what you're talking about as far as the capacity for all these projects combined.
Mhm.
We should be weighing all of them together based on the capacity of what's available.
Yeah, and again, it's about what sort of energy you can put into that distribution system. So it's not as if it impacts, and please stop me if I'm overstating, it's not as if it impacts the ability for other users or whether it's residential or commercial to draw from the things, and impacts that. It's just, you can only squeeze, kind of like a garden hose, you can only put so much water down the thing until it's maxed out, you can't squeeze any more in. But you can always take it out the other end. So, I saw you kept us to the last because this was going to be a little bit of a meatier discussion than some of the other ones, but I appreciate that.
Well, no, I'm glad it worked out that way. I usually do it how it was presented to and received by the building department.
Okay.
So I look at the date.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
But
I wasn't sure.
it worked out
We
fine.
weren't sure, based on the discussions where we
Right.
were on the agenda. And that's fair. But I thought and some of the other ones were going, I'm like, well, that's good because those are 5-minute discussions and mine isn't. And so I always hate to be that person sitting in the room for the 5-minute discussion that's last.
Right, it worked out well,
And
right.
as I said, this is the first of many meetings and a kind of a kickoff of an initial presentation and a little bit of an exchange of ideas and questions so we can get a sense of, to the extent you're able, what's on your mind. And I think we accomplished that tonight. And,
What is the difference?
It seems
between-
later than 8. I'm sorry, Chuck, I didn't.
What is the difference between commercial and community, except for the tax breaks and how you negotiate the pilot? Is there any difference there? Because Borrego came in as solar, or as commercial. They're up off of 278. Eden right next to them are as well as Hope or community, Dusenberry community. And so, what made Borrego go commercial in our community on their project? What are the advantages there?
This is where
Were you
this-
representing Borrego at that time? You do look familiar, though. You have been before the board.
On top of it,
In a landfill.
Got it.
The Oakwood Ave.
Oakwood Ave,
Yeah.
You see change the requirements on that landfill, whereas the discussion with DEC, but most probably the one owner will most probably will move that project to a different place, and hopefully we will meet very soon for the same project that we did in Colorado.
That's why I keep getting confused when you say the Troy landfill. I keep thinking of the one on the other side of Troy, and this is the one that's in the
Yeah,
industrial
where
area.
the
up on
incinerator,
40.
where the incinerator used to be. And that's the issue that we're having with the environmental, because once it comes out of incinerator, you don't have much left besides heavy metals. They're real nasty stuff.
Yeah,
So-
that piece of land up there has been kicking around for an awful lot of years with a lot of different proposals, I think that have come and gone because of the history up there, so. But I was always confused when you were saying that the Troy landfill, there's another Troy landfill down, the one that's actually in the city.
Emerald Green, yeah, off of Campbell Avenue.
Yes, yeah, that's the one I was thinking of, but that's why this was in the town. So, yeah, and that's actually one of the few areas in the town on the west, or probably the only part in the west part of the town that's zoned appropriately, because that's part of your industrial district. At the only part basically on the west part of the town where it's zoned appropriate. Everything else is really to the east.
So the other project is on hold pending DEC. And then we had another proposal, and I'm not sure if that's still going through for the end of Lord Avenue
Bel Air.
on Bel Air Lane as well.
Yes, yep, that's CV's, and they were in for a zoning change.
And we did talk through at one point, internally, the different ways, one was to go to the town board for a zone change and just say, okay, change the zoning here. We looked at whether maybe a planned development district would be appropriate. So in particular, the one off of Shippey Lane, it's zoned recreation largely to the south and the west being the Troy Country Club, and it's zoned largely PDD to the east and again to the south. It's a PDD owned by United Companies, Mussolini. I have never quite figured out, it's been on the books forever, but it's not been developed, so I'm not, probably a residential or some
They
sort
have a
of.
plan for a big development in there. all the time.
Yeah, big plan.
Donate the land on the other side of Route 2 as Forever Wild.
Yeah.
Parkland and whatnot, so.
So we discussed going through the zone change route and thought that, again, that was probably more of the fallback position. And it was, when we decided to look at the use variance, it was all about whether we could demonstrate that there's just no place to connect within the allowed zones. And obviously, the prime question is, well, there's some other people doing it. How are they doing it? So we have to come back with an answer on that. But here, and we've looked at this in other communities, and the map doesn't play out the same way. You look at some other communities and you go, okay, do I need a use variance? Can I get a use variance? And the map just doesn't support it because the lines and the substations are good. Here in this part of the town, it's all red. And it seems to make the case to demonstrate why you can't make the connection out there. And so that's the reason why we decided to go here rather than to go to the town board and maybe confront some different issues that the town board might have with a proposed rezoning.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So how would you like to, what would you consider to be the right next steps from, or?
Can I make a suggestion?
Of course, thank you. We're open to that.
Fairly meaty application documents.
Yeah.
Certainly within the board's discretion, and Mr. Brennan's familiar with this process. There are a lot of technical issues associated with this, particularly in terms of a need showing. The board does have the ability to retain some technical support That was done with the cell tower application. I think this would be along the same lines for, this is, if you will, not your, if I can use the phrase, garden variety use variance application. Some fairly difficult legal and technical issues associated with it. On the CBE application, again, it's within the board's discretion, number one, to retain any technical support, and if you decide to do that, what firm you would select to do that. I do note that LaBerge Group is providing technical support to the town board on the CBE application, so they are currently reviewing the technical issues associated with the solar project for the town currently. So one suggestion would be some time to review the content of the applications, consider retention of technical support on review of the application, and if yes, you could then move to formally retain and set up an escrow for those purposes. Probably as a first step, just to give you time to familiarize yourselves with the booklets and maybe put it on for the November 15th if there's any further questions about the content of the application, and discuss retaining some technical support at that point, just to keep the review going. But this is new information for you tonight. It'll give you a little chance to digest these, and subject to further discussion, November 15th. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. We certainly have no objection hiring, an engineering company. And certainly if LaBerge is already looking at another one, it probably makes sense that they're have the education or educating themselves in the same exact issue. So that makes some economics of scale. And certainly just keeping on the agenda for, maybe we can come back and receive some additional questions you might generate in the next 30 days would be great. I do like the idea of trying to stay on the agenda, so we move the process forward, however incrementally, as you're ready. And we already have some homework to take with us, and we'd appreciate the ability to come back and, we can, if you're ready to talk about retaining someone now or the next meeting, whatever your preference is, but certainly coming back for the next agenda is our preference.
That would be good. Okay, so November 15th, 7:15.
Yes.
Well, whenever we're done with the public hearings.
Yes, there's always.
Yeah, I was going to
there's
say,
always that.
you'll,
That's true.
7:15, that's a
After that.
That's right.
very timely public hearings.
Yeah.
Last item of, we'll call it existing business before new business is discussed.
Okay.
Absolutely. Well, it's nice seeing everyone again. We'll see you back in a month.
Okay, thank you very much. Have
Thank
a
you.
good night. Good night. Good night now. Yeah, so any other new business?
That is it.
Okay,
That's enough, I would think,
I
right?
think so.
Oh, there was more out there and they just didn't show up, so.
Make a motion to close tonight's hearing. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Patricia. All in favor? Meeting's closed. Thank you.
Well, those people that didn't come in tonight, they'll be on the agenda.